It happened at a family dinner that was supposed to be casual. One long table, soft jazz playing in the background, wine glasses clinking. The kind of night where everyone smiles just enough to pretend they're happy. My husband's cousin was telling a story. His mother laughed too loudly. Someone asked about real estate prices. And then, right in the middle of it all, my sister-in-law leaned back in her chair, looked straight at me and said, "If you disappeared tomorrow, I don't think anyone here would even notice." There was a split second of silence. Then the laughter came. Not awkward laughter. Not nervous laughter. Real laughter. Warm. Comfortable. Like she'd just said what everyone had already been thinking. I watched the faces around the table as they laughed. His parents, his aunt, his uncle, and then I saw my husband laugh too. That was the moment I knew something in my life had already ended. I just hadn't caught up to it yet. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask anyone to explain themselves. I lifted my glass, smiled calmly, and said, "Okay, challenge accepted." No one took me seriously. They went right back to dessert. They didn't realize I meant it. My name is Irene. I'm 35 years old, and at that point, I had been married for just under 8 years. Long enough to know the difference between being included and being tolerated. Long enough to understand when a family sees you as one of their own, and when they never will. My husband, Daniel, came from a family that looked perfect from the outside. Old money energy without ever seeing the words. Holiday homes, alumni connections, dinners that felt more like meetings than meals. They lived in Harrison Cove, a coastal town where last names mattered, and everyone somehow knew everyone else's business. I didn't grow up like that. I was raised by a mother who worked nights and slept in the afternoons. We reused gift bags. We measured success by whether the bills were paid and there was food left in the fridge. I learned early how to make myself useful, agreeable, easy to have around. And when I married Daniel, I brought that skill with me. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I dressed the way his mother preferred. I stopped correcting people when they dismissed my work as creative stuff. I told myself that belonging takes time. But the truth was simpler. They didn't dislike me. That would have required effort. They just didn't see me as important. That dinner wasn't the first time I'd been erased. It was just the first time someone said it out loud, bold enough to call it a joke, cruel enough to enjoy the silence afterward. And when my husband laughed along with them, something inside me clicked into place. So when I said challenge accepted, I wasn't being dramatic. I was making a decision. And before the sun came up the next morning, I was already gone. Daniel and I met in our final year of college. I was juggling 2 part-time jobs while finishing my degree, the kind of schedule where your planner looks like a crime scene. He was the calm one, polished, confident, already speaking about his future like it was a reservation he'd made years ago. We bonded over late nights at the campus library, coffee cups stacked between us, whispering complaints about group projects and professors who loved to hear themselves talk. When he asked me out, it felt easy, safe, like stepping into a life where I wouldn't always have to be the one figuring everything out alone. His family loved him in a way that was unquestionable and unquestioning. Daniel was the golden boy, not flashy, not rebellious, just but correct. He did the right things in the right order. And when he introduced me to them, I wanted desperately to fit into that story. His parents lived just outside Brookhaven Ridge, in a house that felt more like a carefully curated showroom than a home. Everything matched. Everything had a reason. His mother, Elaine, greeted me with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. His father, Robert, shook my hand and immediately asked what I planned to do with my degree. I told them about my work, about design projects, freelance clients, the way I loved turning vague ideas into something tangible. Elaine nodded politely. "Oh, how fun," she said. "You must be very creative." Not capable, not skilled, creative. Like I'd told her I made friendship bracelets. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table that night. "They like you," he whispered on the drive home. And I wanted so badly to believe him that I ignored the quiet doubt settling into my chest. Over the years, that doubt grew legs. Family gatherings became performances where I played a role I never auditioned for. Elaine would ask Daniel about work, investments, promotions, then turned to me and asked if I was still keeping busy. His brother's wife was introduced as a real professional, while I was Daniel's better half. Little things, always little things. I was talked over, interrupted, corrected in front of strangers. If I shared an opinion, it was gently dismissed or rerouted by someone with a louder voice and a better last name. And Daniel, Daniel never meant to hurt me. That was the problem. Whenever I brought it up, quietly, carefully, he brushed it off with the same phrases. They don't mean anything by it. You're just sensitive. That's just how my family jokes. So I learned to absorb it. I adjusted my wardrobe to fit Elaine's idea of tasteful. I stopped mentioning projects that excited me. I learned when to speak and, more importantly, when not to. The longer we were married, the more my world shrank. When Daniel was offered a position that required frequent travel, the assumption was immediate and unspoken. I would be the flexible one. My work would bend. My schedule would adapt. My ambitions would wait. And I let them. I told myself it was temporary, that once things settled, I pick myself back up. But time has a way of settling into permanence when no one is paying attention. Then came the loss. It happened quietly. No dramatic hospital scenes, just a doctor's calm voice, a sterile room, and a sentence that split my life into before and after. Daniel was out of town. He offered to come home. I told him not to rush. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. Elaine sent flowers with a note that said, "Everything happens for a reason." Daniel's sister joked that maybe it was stress. No one came over. No one sat with me. No one asked how I was really doing. That's when something in me started paying attention. I noticed how often I felt invisible, how easily my absence went unremarked, how my silence had become expected, comfortable even. By the time that casual family dinner rolled around, I was already disappearing. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. So when his sister finally did, when she turned my quiet erasure into a punchline, it didn't break me. It clarified everything. That laugh around the table wasn't just laughter. It was confirmation. I didn't tell anyone that night. When we got home, Daniel went straight to the shower, humming like it had been a good evening, like nothing remarkable had happened. I stood in the kitchen, still wearing the same clothes, listening to the water run, replaying the laughter at that table over and over until it stopped sounding like noise and started sounding like truth. That was the strangest part. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. At 2:17 a.m., I slid out of bed and walked into the spare room that had quietly become my workspace over the years. I opened my laptop and started doing something I hadn't done in a long time. I made decisions. I checked the balance on our joint account and my personal one, the small account I'd never closed, the one Daniel used to tease me about. "You're so cautious," he'd say. I transferred exactly half. No drama, no punishment, just math. I searched for apartments 3 states away, in Lakewood Falls, where my old college friend Mara lived. I looked at bus schedules, short-term rentals, storage units. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. Daniel kissed my cheek that morning, distracted, already late. "Love you," he said automatically. "I know," I replied. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I called Mara. "I need help," I said. "How much?" she asked. "Today," I answered. She was at my door in under 2 hours with coffee, boxes, and the kind of energy you only get from someone who loves you without conditions. We packed what mattered: documents, clothes, my work equipment, the things that still felt like me. I left behind furniture, decorations, anything that felt like part of a life I was stepping out of. I wrote Daniel a letter, not emotional, not accusatory. I told him I needed space, that I'd taken only what was mine, that I'd paid what was owed, that I wouldn't be reachable for a while. I didn't explain myself beyond that, because after years of explaining, I was done. I placed my wedding ring on top of the letter, then I left. The drive out of town felt unreal, like I was watching myself from a distance. Every mile marker loosened something in my chest. By the time I crossed state lines, I was breathing deeply, but fully, for the first time in years. I didn't announce my arrival in Lakewood Falls. I didn't post. I didn't answer calls. Daniel's messages came in waves. Confusion, annoyance, concern, anger. "Where are you?" "This is childish. We need to talk. At least tell my mom you're okay." Not once did he mention the dinner. Not once did he ask why. That silence told me everything I needed to know. The first weeks were rough. I cried in grocery store parking lots. I second-guessed myself at 3 a.m. I almost picked up the phone more times than I can count. Instead, I found a therapist. I unpacked years of swallowed words. I rebuilt my work slowly, one small client at a time, jobs that paid the bills, but more importantly, reminded me I was competent. I changed my number. I stopped checking social media. I became someone whose absence didn't echo back to me every day. And then something unexpected happened. No one came looking. Daniel's family didn't reach out, not really. A few vague messages filtered through mutual acquaintances. Nothing direct, nothing urgent. It stung, but it also confirmed the truth I'd been avoiding. I hadn't left a hole. I'd stepped out of a space where I'd never truly existed. And in that quiet, anonymous life I was building, I started to feel something unfamiliar. Visible, not to them, to myself. The first time I realized I wasn't invisible anymore was painfully ordinary. I was sitting in a small coffee shop in Lakewood Falls, laptop open, headphones on, working through revisions for a local business I'd just signed. Nothing glamorous, no applause, no one looking twice at me. And yet, I felt solid. Over the months, my work grew quietly. One client referred another. A short-term contract turned into a steady collaboration. I rented a desk in a shared studio space filled with people who spoke about ideas instead of appearances. No one asked who I was married to. No one softened their tone when talking to me. No one laughed when I spoke. That alone felt radical. By the time the divorce paperwork was finalized, clean, efficient, mercifully unemotional, I had built a life that no longer revolved around the absence of anyone else. Daniel didn't fight it. His lawyer sent a brief message. He's surprised but cooperative. That word, surprised, made me smile. Surprise implies you assumed something would stay the same. Almost a year after I left, I received an email that made my hands still on the keyboard. An invitation. A regional conference, creative professionals, panel discussions, networking dinners, hosted in Brookhaven Ridge, the same town that I had vanished from. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling the old tension to try to wake up in my body. Then I closed my laptop, stood up, and took a breath. I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. The night of the event, I walked into the venue alone. No husband at my side. No role to play. Just my name on a badge and my work in my portfolio. It didn't take long. I saw Elaine first. Still polished, still scanning rooms the way generals assess territory. Then Robert, mid-conversation, confident as ever. And then her, Daniel's sister. She froze when she saw me, just for half a second. But it was enough. Her eyes flicked over me, recalculating. No smirk this time. No joke, queued up and waiting. I nodded politely as I passed, the way you acknowledge someone who used to matter. Later, during a panel discussion, I spoke, not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. I answered a question about creative ownership and boundaries in collaborative work. I talked about knowing when to walk away from spaces that profit from your silence, about choosing environments that allow growth instead of demanding compliance. The room listened. I didn't look at her while I spoke, but I felt it when she did. Afterward, people approached me. Compliments, business cards, invitations to talk more. That's when Daniel found me. He looked different, older, quieter. I didn't know you were coming, he said. I didn't know you were still surprised, I replied gently. We talked for a few minutes. About work, about life, about how things had shifted in his family since I left. He didn't apologize, but he didn't laugh either. That mattered. As the evening wound down, his sister approached. No audience, no performance. I didn't think you'd actually disappear, she said. I didn't do it to prove a point, I answered. I did it to survive. She nodded, uncomfortable. For once, she didn't have a comeback. You seem different, she finally said. I am, I agreed. That's the point. I left before dessert. I didn't need the last word. I didn't need vindication. Walking back to my hotel, I realized something that surprised even me. I wasn't proud because they'd noticed me now. I was proud because I no longer needed them to. I had disappeared from their world, and in doing so I had finally appeared in my own. A year earlier, I had walked out of a life where my silence made other people comfortable. Now I was walking into one where my voice carried weight. When I returned to Lakewood Falls after the conference, nothing dramatic happened. No victory parade. No sudden transformation. Just the quiet continuation of a life I had chosen deliberately, piece by piece. And that was the real win. I went back to my routine. Morning walks by the water. Afternoons in the studio. Evenings answering emails from clients who valued my work without needing to know my history. I signed 2 new contracts within the month. One of them turned into a long-term partnership that allowed me to finally stop worrying about stability and start thinking about growth. Not survival, growth. Sometimes late at night, I thought about that dinner, the laughter, The way my husband's face had folded into the room instead of turning toward me. The version of myself who had raised her glass with steady hands even though everything inside her was shaking. I felt compassion for her now. She wasn't weak. She was exhausted. And exhaustion, when ignored long enough, doesn't lead to breakdowns. It leads to decisions. People often imagine disappearing as an act of drama, packing bags, slamming doors, making statements. But my disappearance wasn't loud. It was methodical, quiet, responsible. I didn't vanish to punish anyone. I vanished because staying meant continuing to shrink. And here's the truth no one talks about enough. Sometimes you don't leave because you're unloved. You leave because you're unseen. There's a difference. Daniel eventually stopped reaching out. His family returned to their carefully balanced orbit. I wished them no harm. I simply no longer made space for them in my life. Not out of bitterness, out of clarity. I learned that the opposite of disappearing isn't being noticed. It's being present, fully present in your own life. It's waking up without bracing yourself. It's speaking without rehearsing apologies. It's choosing environments that don't require you to earn basic respect. If someone had told me a year ago that disappearing would give me everything I thought marriage was supposed to provide, safety, autonomy, self-worth, I wouldn't have believed them. But here I was, visible to the right people, valuable on my own terms, and finally at home inside myself. So if you're listening to this and wondering whether walking away makes you selfish, dramatic, or ungrateful, ask yourself a simpler question. Are you staying because you're loved, or because you've learned how to make yourself small? Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting to be seen. It's leaving the room where no one ever looked up. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own life. Maybe it stirred up old memories, or maybe it planted a question you haven't asked yourself yet. Either way, you're not alone. Stories like this exist because so many of us have lived some version of them. Thank you for staying until the end. This channel exists to tell stories that are uncomfortable, honest, and human, and there are many more coming. Until next time, take care of yourself, and don't be afraid to choose the life where you matter.